the Blue Ridge, where settlements still carry names like Hog Scald Hollow, encounters continue to surface that challenge everything we think we know. A shattered kitchen door in Baltimore, 14-foot wingspans casting impossible shadows, bone fragments that defy classification, barrel-chested creatures in the forest, predatory figures rising onto two legs where only deer should be. These are the documented cases, the ones with witnesses, police reports, and physical evidence. In Appalachia, the line between folklore and fact remains dangerously thin. In January 2021, a Baltimore police detective was working in his Howard County home office when heavy thuds shattered the 2 a.m. silence coming from behind his house near the kitchen door. He quietly investigated, opening the back door to find himself face to face with a creature unlike anything he'd encountered. 7 feet tall and covered in black and reddish-brown fur, it stood on his patio with a long, teeth-filled snout. The creature instantly turned toward him, hissed and lunged. He slammed the door, retreating to his office, but the creature shattered his kitchen door, heavy footsteps pounding across his wood floors. It moved through his home, snorting as glass shattered and furniture crashed in his dining room. Gun drawn, the detective crept toward the dining room. The creature turned, its expression angry and disturbingly human. For a moment he felt it wanted to tear him apart. Then, silently, it rushed back through the kitchen and hurled itself out the back door. Maryland locals recognized the description. The Dwayo had struck again. This incident, marking the creature's first documented home invasion, exists in Baltimore police records. When Pennsylvania German settlers crossed the Mason-Dixon line in the late 1700s, they brought stories of the Hexenwolf, the Witch Wolf, an upright lupine predator. This creature possessed an unsettling ability to melt into the landscape or vanish entirely. Farmers warned that encountering one could bring claw marks or worse, an inseparable run of bad luck, a dark force staining the victim's life permanently. As families followed the Great Wagon Road southwest into Maryland, the legends followed. Local newspapers recorded tales of an identical wolfman, soon nicknamed the Dwayo. Early Maryland descriptions matched the Hexenwolf precisely: bipedal, shaggy pelt, wolf's head, nocturnal habits, suggesting the same being with a regional name. The settlers arrived prepared. Barn facades displayed brightly painted hex signs, circular stars, tulips, and distelfinks. In Deutsch belief, each pattern served as schutz, protection meant to keep baneful spirits like Hexenwolf away. The first Maryland case surfaced in 1944. Frightful screams and 13.5-inch tracks. John Becker's 1965 attack at Gambriel State Park detailed a 6-foot creature with long black hair and a wolf's growl. The air carried the stench of wet fur and something fouler, rotting meat mixed with musk. Local police filed an official report. 8 years later, Sykesville residents discovered identical footprints near farms where cattle and dogs had been found dead. The tracks were measured and photographed. The attacks followed traditional Hexenwolf patterns: root cellar raids, chicken kills, toppled garbage cans, but rarely dogs or cats. Track casts near Thurmont in 1976 show 5-toed impressions with extended claws, inconsistent with known Maryland wildlife. Hair samples from barbed wire fencing near encounter sites have tested inconclusive, displaying canine traits interwoven with unidentified markers. No DNA analysis has produced a definitive species match. Near Coxey Brown Road in 2009, a woman driving alone encountered what she described as a dog-like animal on 2 legs, with oversized fangs and solid black eyes. It leaped against her driver's side window with enough force to rock the car. Overwhelming dread washed over her. Her passenger side mirror captured 4 parallel gouges. The woman reported experiencing a darkness that followed me home, matching historical accounts of the Hexenwolf's psychological effects. Some distance northwest, near Antietam National Battlefield, a couple driving on October 12, 2023, watched a tall, brown, bipedal creature step from a roadside hedgerow. It paused at the edge of their headlight beams before retreating. Their report noted its deliberate movements and obvious intelligence. The creature had been watching them. The creature's behavior aligns with Hexenwolf traditions. Reports cluster around woodland edges and limestone meadows, the mixed farmland of German immigrant districts. The Dwayo operates strictly nocturnally. Witnesses describe piercing howls and sudden oppressive mind pressure, reflecting the creature's reputed ability to project thoughts and freeze prey. Those affected liken the sensation to a vice tightening around the temples, accompanied by an overwhelming urge to remain motionless. Modern sightings continue following predictable patterns. Route 15 sees regular reports of large, upright canines observed by motorists. Rangers at Cunningham Falls State Park acknowledge unusual wildlife reports. Multiple witnesses describe deliberate stalking behavior, suggesting the Dwayo observes humans before revealing itself. Unlike random animal encounters, Dwayo sightings often involve the creature positioning itself where it will be clearly visible, as if making intentional contact. Newspapers from the 1960s and 1970s revealed dozens of unpublished incident reports filed with local police departments throughout Western Maryland. These cases, many dismissed as hoaxes, share consistent details: bipedal stance, wolf-like features, unusual vocalizations, and encounters occurring near traditional Pennsylvania German settlements. The geographic clustering follows the original migration patterns of Hexenwolf folklore. In Deutsch lore, the Hexenwolf belonged to a broader category of harm-bringing forest folk. After crossing into Maryland, it acquired a new adversary, the airborne Snallygaster. Local folklore maintains an eternal conflict between these creatures, with witnesses reporting otherworldly screams during their nocturnal battles. Those hex signs still dot the Maryland countryside, their purpose remembered by older residents. Whether they work or not, something continues to prowl the woods of Western Maryland, leaving tracks that do not match any known species and inspiring the same ancestral fear. The detective's home intrusion report remains open. The scratches on that woman's car mirror are still visible. Somewhere in those hills, painted stars keep their silent watch against whatever stalked the Deitch settlements and now hunts the borderland between Pennsylvania and Maryland, between the known and the unthinkable, something many now call a dogman. The pre-dawn stillness shattered on a ridge above Catoctin Hollow as the Snallygaster descended, its reptilian wings, a 14-foot span of scaled membrane, beating the cold mist with a leathery whip. Sulfur and rot clung to the pine-scented air. Below, the Dwayo met the challenge. 7 feet of black and reddish-brown fur bristled, its wolf-like snout revealing teeth in a silent snarl as it stood bipedal, ready. The airborne horror shrieked, a sound like a train whistle, diving with tentacles extended. The terrestrial beast responded with a guttural growl, its eyes fixed on the single unblinking cyclopic eye of its ancient adversary. For a moment, a tense silence. Then the Snallygaster struck, a blur of metallic beak and grasping tendrils. The Dwayo, surprisingly agile, sidestepped, its claws raking air where the Snallygaster had been. The clash was brief, brutal. A primal scream of frustration from the Snallygaster as it recoiled, leaving torn earth and broken branches in its wake, before ascending back into the fading darkness, its quarry unharmed, leaving the Dwayo to melt back into the shadows. The creature's presence in the Appalachian borderlands dates back to German settlers who arrived in Frederick County in the 1730s. They brought stories of the Schnellergeist, the quick spirit, a vampiric flying predator that descended from mountains to drain blood. Unlike European dragons, this creature hunted with surgical precision, using tentacle-like appendages to extract every drop before discarding victims. Early settlers protected themselves by adorning barn doors with 7-pointed stars, symbols believed to repel the creature. Many of these protective markings remain visible today, faded reminders of a long-standing threat. The first documented American encounter occurred in 1735 near Braddock Heights. James Harding, working late at his kiln, witnessed a massive winged creature investigate the heat. When it detected him, it let out a shrill train whistle scream before taking flight. This established the creature's distinctive call. Descriptions remained consistent. A reptilian bird hybrid with a 14-foot wingspan, scaled flanks, primitive feathers, a hooked metallic beak with razor-sharp teeth, and tentacle-like appendages. It possessed a single, unblinking eye, and its presence carried the stench of sulfur and rotting meat. Survivors described an overwhelming sense of dread, suggesting possible psychic abilities. The winter of 1909 brought the Snallygaster national attention. Sightings across Frederick County exploded. Attacks followed a pattern: silent approach, precision strikes to the neck, complete blood drainage, and disposal of drained corpses. Bill Gerson's death on February 12, 1909 provided detailed evidence. Witnesses heard screams as the creature carried him to a cliff top before piercing his jugular. The scene showed clear talon marks and a blood trail leading to exsanguinated remains. Police documented puncture wounds consistent with a large curved beak, but found no explanation for the complete absence of blood. President Theodore Roosevelt, a passionate hunter, would hardly turn down the chance to pursue such a creature, despite official records suggesting he considered postponing an African safari. Private letters hint Roosevelt quietly postponed his safari, spending late March 1909 in the Blue Ridge under U.S. Geological Survey cover. The Smithsonian's unprecedented offer for a live specimen suggests unusual institutional interest. Unexplained gaps in Roosevelt's presidential schedule during late March 1909 coincided with the final Snallygaster sightings of that year. Then, after months of terror, the Snallygaster attack stopped, vanishing for over 2 decades. This abrupt absence raised questions of intervention. White House logs show Roosevelt never left American soil during the critical late March period. Reports from Frederick County described federal agents and military personnel conducting geological surveys in remote attack areas, finding excavated caves and burned sites matching no official activities. Smithsonian's Department of Vertebrate Zoology holds sealed specimen containers from spring 1909, classified under ongoing research. No major Snallygaster encounters occurred again until 1932, when one reportedly fell into a moonshine vat. Federal agents quickly contained the incident, dynamiting the site and removing all evidence, a swift response suggesting some form of ongoing monitoring. Modern encounters indicate the creature may be recovering. In March 2009, a state forestry worker surveying timber near Sharpsburg, Maryland, found what he thought was aircraft debris scattered across a remote hillside. Twisted metal fragments embedded high in oak trees showed no rust despite their age. Investigators noted the metal's unusual composition, harder than steel, yet lightweight, with an organic keratin-like structure, like baleen or horn. Locals immediately recognized the evidence. The Snallygaster had fed again. In 2014, reports surfaced of a large aerial predator in Preston County, West Virginia, with a wide wingspan. A team photographed what appeared to be a massive winged creature. Local resident Ty claimed multiple sightings of a large bipedal figure with extended wing-like appendages. Sarah Cooper, a cryptozoologist, founded the American Snallygaster Museum in 2021 after a significant encounter in Frederick County, the first credible sighting in its traditional Maryland territory in nearly a decade. Her methodical approach has elevated modern Snallygaster research, with her museum generating additional sighting reports. This pattern suggests increasing activity, as if the creature is testing whether Roosevelt's successors maintain his vigilance. Physical evidence remains elusive but persistent. The metallic beak fragments found near Sharpsburg tested positive for organic compounds unknown to modern science. Hair and scale samples collected from attack sites show characteristics of both avian and reptilian DNA, but no definitive species match exists. Appalachian communities maintain their ancestral vigilance, painting 7-pointed stars on barn doors each spring, symbols against the terror that still hunts mountain hollows, leaving drained carcasses. Roosevelt's sealed expedition files in the 23-year gap after the 1909 outbreak tell a story of a president who likely did more than merely consider hunting. Today, the creature's range spans the Blue Ridge like pinpoints on a map. From its ancestral eyrie in Frederick County, Maryland, north into Pennsylvania Dutch country, southwest through West Virginia, and westward into Ohio's Appalachian Plateau near Casstown. The only thing holding it back is the Dwyo. The evidence is unmistakable. What began as a colonial terror has grown into an interstate predator, a true Appalachian cryptid whose 14-foot shadow can darken 5 states in a single night. If the Snallygaster feeds unchecked, livestock perish. If the Dwyo dominates, the forests fall silent. Appalachian life depends on their uneasy balance. In the summer of 2019, a teenager from eastern Kentucky was camping with friends in the Daniel Boone National Forest under the knob of Redbird Ridge when bone-rattling sounds began at midnight. Something dragging and clicking, not animal footsteps, circled their campsite through the underbrush. The scent of carrion and ozone drifted on the night air.
Okay, that time I want to hear Bone Rub. That's what's called Bone Warrior. It's a Native American legend where an Indian fell in battle but never got buried properly or had a proper ceremony. Basically, it's a warrior. It's undead, bones and everything. When it locks eyes with you, it'll start chasing you down to kill you in a battle. And add on to his armies. Quite a lot of Indian spirit legends about that. Only way to truly kill one of them is using a blessed bone tomahawk made from a buffalo bone. The jawbone of a buffalo is blessed by a shaman. Problem is, though, fighting one of them. Even if you do win, you do die in the process. Cut your soul, reused to bound it into the ground. If I remember correctly, there's one legend called Jericho. It's an Indian legend. It took them 13 braves to take care of this one Indian out. So yeah, this legend they're talking about the bone round, yeah, it's another Native American legend. Way older too, so let's go back to it.
Light beams caught movement. They glimpsed what looked like a pale, skinless head sitting atop a pile of yellowed bones that somehow moved as one creature. The thing retreated when they shone light directly on it, but continued rattling just beyond their vision until dawn. Local rangers found no animal tracks, only scattered bone fragments that didn't match any known wildlife. Eastern Kentucky families recognized the description immediately. Rawhead and Bloody Bones had found new transgressors. When British colonists pushed into Appalachian hollows in the 1700s, they brought an ancient terror from Lancashire and Yorkshire. By 1566, Bloody Bone Rawhead was already a nursery threat, and Samuel Johnson's 1755 dictionary simply defined Rawhead as a specter used to frighten children. In the Old Country, Ruth Tongue's Somerset folklore documented the creature's domestic terror. If you were heroic enough to peep through a crack, you would get a glimpse of the dreadful crouching creature, with blood running down his face, seated waiting on a pile of raw bones that had belonged to children who told lies or said bad words. Frontier isolation and Scots-Irish storytelling primed settlers to graft new legends onto Britain's stair-covered terror. In the Ozark Mountains, the story evolved around Old Betty, a conjuring woman living in the woods with her companion, an ugly razorback hog named Rawhead. When a hunter killed and ate the pig, Betty used mountain witchcraft to resurrect it as a vengeful spirit. The reanimated Rawhead became a skinless skull that bites its victims, while Bloody Bones transformed into a headless skeleton that dances. Traditional British accounts described a lean, naked giant with pale skin and great grasping hands. His head is a gruesome sight, all exposed bone and wide, staring eyes, with rivulets of blood running down his face. In Appalachian versions, the physical form split into two entities, Rawhead as a skinless skull, and Bloody Bones as a headless skeleton. Some accounts depicted a pile of bloody bones, rattling to life as a headless horror on which a skinless head would find its place. The description similarity to Scotland's Nuckalabee, a skinless monstrosity, suggests these creatures may share common Celtic origins. The creature's behavior evolved from punishing misbehaving children to targeting adult transgressors. Modern Kentucky versions describe Rawhead seeking thieves and trespassers, expanding its role from child disciplinary tool to supernatural enforcer of moral behavior. In 2015, a copper wire thief named Dale Compton disappeared near an abandoned mine shaft outside Hazard after weeks of bone-rattling sounds following him home. His truck was found running with the door open. Search teams discovered only scattered bone fragments arranged in a perfect circle around the mine entrance. An Eastern Kentucky resident recalled their grandmother telling a very unsettling bedtime story of Rawhead and Bloody Bones, noting that while family and friends were familiar with it, after traveling away into other regions, nobody knows what I'm talking about. This geographic specificity reflects the creature's particular resonance in Appalachian culture. Contemporary accounts maintain the traditional elements. A Kentucky storyteller recounted a version where Rawhead was Granny Mae's beloved hog, killed by a greedy hunter. Through mountain witchcraft, the creature returned as a monstrous golem of bone, rot, and rage, with bones rattling through the dark woods, sniffing for thieves and trespassers. The creature's influence extends across the broader Appalachian region. West Virginia folklore acknowledges many variations of a child-eating creature known as Rawhead, Bloody Bones, or a combination of the two. Reports from North Carolina suggest migration patterns that followed Appalachian settlement routes, with the creature's presence in Tennessee, Virginia, and other mountain states demonstrating successful adaptation to diverse regional cultures. Physical evidence remains limited but persistent. Bone fragments found at encounter sites consistently test as human remains of indeterminate age, though DNA analysis has never produced matches to missing persons. Osteologists noted spiral fractures inconsistent with post-mortem breakage. The fragments show unusual wear patterns, as if they've been moving against each other for extended periods. Mountain communities maintain cautious respect for the creature, viewing it as supernatural justice rather than random terror. Whether it represents ancestral wisdom made manifest or collective psychological pressure, something continues to move through Appalachian hollows, seeking those who believe their sins remain hidden. The camping trip's bone fragments were quietly collected by park rangers and filed under unexplained wildlife remains. Unlike the Dwyo's claw marks or the Snallygaster's drained carcasses, Rawhead leaves no survivors, only silence. Somewhere in those ancient mountains, justice wears the face of exposed bone and speaks in the language of rattling calcium, reminding all who hear that moral debts eventually come due. The question remains, is it a relief that there are so few reported encounters because the creature is merely folklore? Or is it frightening that every unreported encounter might be a fatality? In Adams, Tennessee, during the winter of 1817, the Bell family began experiencing phenomena that would attract the attention of America's future president. John Bell's encounters started with strange animal sightings and mysterious knocking sounds, but quickly escalated to physical attacks, leaving visible bruises, and an entity demonstrating disturbing intelligence, speaking in multiple voices, quoting scripture, engaging in theological discussions. When Andrew Jackson arrived to investigate, his wagon wheels inexplicably stopped turning as they approached the Bell farm. A metallic voice from nearby vegetation spoke directly to the future president, and Jackson witnessed supernatural events that convinced him he would rather face a British army than deal with such forces again. The haunting climaxed with John Bell's death in December 1820, the only death in American history officially attributed to supernatural causes by state authorities. Jackson's detailed private correspondence about the incident remains sealed in the Tennessee State Archives, though historians note his subsequent interest in unconventional military applications and unexplained gaps in his presidential schedule during later supernatural incidents across Tennessee. Like the Dwayo and Snallygaster that stalked these same ancient ridges, the Bell Witch proved that Appalachian mountains harbor forces beyond rational explanation. When settlers pushed into Appalachian hollows in the 1700s, they encountered a complex convergence of German-Pennsylvania Dutch traditions, Scottish-Irish folk magic, Cherokee medicine practices, and African rootwork that created a unique system of mountain witchcraft. Unlike fairy tale witches, Appalachian practitioners were real people whose influence shaped daily survival in isolated communities. The tradition manifested in 4 distinct forms: granny witches providing health care through herbal remedies, catnip for hives as documented in foxfire collections, sulfur for respiratory ailments recorded in 1800s medical texts, malevolent witches casting hexes on farms and families, witch doctors counteracting evil spells through uncrossing work, and water witches locating underground sources using dowsing techniques passed through family lines. The raw power of Appalachian conjuring manifested in practitioners like Betty Harrison, the respected Ozark conjure woman whose mastery of ancient magical texts allowed her to create supernatural vengeance when conventional justice failed. Her work demonstrates how mountain witches wielded forces capable of reshaping reality itself, birthing creatures like Rawhead and Bloody Bones that continue stalking those who transgress moral boundaries. Physical evidence persists throughout the region. Hex signs, circular geometric patterns featuring stars, hearts, and tulips, still mark barn doors from Pennsylvania to Tennessee, painted fresh each spring by families who understand their protective significance. In 2019, construction workers renovating a 19th century West Virginia farmhouse found glass bottles buried under the foundation, each containing hair, fingernail clippings, and unidentified organic matter. Local historian Martha Wickham identified them as witch bottles, protective charms designed to trap harmful spells, with laboratory analysis confirming the organic materials dated to the mid-1800s. Contemporary encounters continue the pattern. In 2024, Julia Ortega, who had relocated to the Appalachian Mountains, discovered a disturbing smear on her glass door resembling a witch's face pressed against the glass. Her recording equipment malfunctioned repeatedly despite optimal conditions, a phenomenon long reported at sites of supernatural activity throughout Appalachian folklore. Near Asheville in 2020, hikers discovered a ritual site containing multiple fire rings in specific patterns, carved tree symbols, and food offerings. Rangers noted wildlife completely avoided the location despite it being along a known deer trail. Modern practitioners continue the tradition. Byron Ballard, a practicing witch in Asheville, North Carolina, represents ongoing spiritual practices connecting contemporary practitioners to centuries-old traditions. Her routines include pre-dawn rituals, protective stones like tourmaline and obsidian, and kitchen witchcraft through intentional food preparation. These practices mirror historical granny witches while adapting to modern lifestyles. Contemporary encounter reports maintain remarkable consistency with historical patterns. Mysterious elderly women in remote locations, unexplained healing or cursing incidents, traditional protective symbols, and practitioners operating outside conventional systems. Investigation teams documented increased activity throughout 2024, capturing compelling evidence of supernatural phenomena at dozens of regional locations. The Bell Witch Cave in Adams continues experiencing unexplained phenomena, temperature drops, equipment malfunctions, and disembodied voices. Park rangers document these incidents in official reports filed under unusual visitor experiences, maintaining records paralleling 19th century accounts. Mountain communities maintain respectful awareness of practitioners in their areas, understanding the difference between helpful healers and potentially dangerous individuals. Academic institutions now recognize Appalachian witchcraft as sophisticated systems of knowledge preservation and community healthcare that successfully adapted European folk magic to American conditions across multiple generations. Whether viewed as cultural tradition or supernatural reality, the ancient mountains keep their secrets, and those who live among them continue acknowledging forces that resist easy explanation. The evidence from recent years demonstrates that whatever forces gave rise to original witch traditions continue operating today. For 3 centuries, the witches of Appalachia have remained custodians, sometimes healers, sometimes hexers, of the delicate balance between seen and unseen worlds that has defined mountain life for countless generations. On a humid June morning in 2018, thru-hiker Amanda Chen was making good time along a remote section of the Appalachian Trail in North Carolina when she spotted movement 30 yards downslope. A figure crouched beside a fallen log, human in form, but shagged in coarse dark hair, using a sharpened deer antler to extract grubs from rotting wood. When it sensed her presence, the creature's head snapped up, revealing intelligent eyes and a weathered face. For a moment, they stared at each other, Chen's heart hammering against her ribs. Then it crashed through the underbrush with surprising speed, leaving only broken branches and the stench of unwashed humanity mixed with something wilder. Chen's report joined dozens of similar encounters filed with park services across Appalachian states. The documented history of Appalachian wildmen begins in 1877, when gold miners in Globe Valley, North Carolina, encountered what they described as a wild man standing 6 feet 5 inches tall with a funnel-shaped head covered in dark hair. The creature pounded its chest before bounding into the woods with the speed of a deer, leading the miners to a cave filled with scattered animal bones. This established patterns that persist today: primitive living, exceptional physical abilities, and cave habitation. Cherokee traditions speak of the Keklikudle, the Wild Ones, beings who chose deep forest over human settlement, gradually losing their humanity to become something between man and beast. Early settlers dismissed such stories until their own encounters forced recognition of something dwelling in the hollows that resisted easy explanation. The most compelling historical account appeared in Forest and Stream magazine in 1896, detailing the capture of the Wild Man of Chilhowie in East Tennessee's Blount County. 4 hunters encountered a naked figure with talon-like fingernails, tusks instead of teeth, and waist-length hair matted with forest debris. After initially escaping, the creature was eventually captured and committed to an asylum. This remains one of the few documented captures, though asylum records from that period vanished in a fire that consumed most county documents. The Civil War's aftermath provided fertile ground for wildman reports. Confederate records indicate over 12,000 deserters sought refuge in the southern Appalachians. See OR Series 1, formerly Site 5. While Union desertion rates in mountain regiments reached 40% by war's end. Stories tell of men who stayed too long in the deep woods, gradually losing contact with civilization and their own humanity. Modern disappearances fuel contemporary wildman theories. 6-year-old Dennis Martin vanished on June 14, 1969, in Great Smoky Mountains National Park while playing hide-and-seek. Park visitor Harold Key reported hearing a child scream, followed by sighting a disheveled man covered in hair fleeing through the woods carrying something over his shoulder. Despite the most extensive search in park history involving 1,400 searchers, Dennis was never found. 7 years later, 16-year-old Trenny Gibson's 1976 disappearance during a school field trip presented similar mysteries. Witnesses saw her strangely go off trail as if compelled by unseen forces. Search dogs detected her scent at multiple locations miles apart, accessible only through dense wilderness. Footprints matching her shoes appeared at Double Spring Shelter, 4.5 miles from her last known location, suggesting something had carried her across terrain no human could navigate alone. Physical evidence emerges sporadically. Trail cameras occasionally capture blurred images of naked, hair-covered figures moving through remote areas. Primitive shelters constructed from natural materials appear in locations far from established trails. Footprints larger than normal human dimensions, showing signs of prolonged barefoot living, surface near encounter sites before vanishing into rocky terrain. In 2014, cannabis cultivators working a remote North Carolina ridge reported being pelted with stones from the darkness. Inhuman footsteps moved through the underbrush as flashlight beams revealed pale forms moving with jerky motions, their eyes reflecting light like nocturnal predators. Some bore ritual scars, others showed signs of deliberate disfigurement. The cultivators fled as dozens more emerged from hidden places. Recent trail camera footage provides the most compelling modern evidence. In 2021, a camera captured a single frame of a broad-shouldered, hunched wild man outside an abandoned house. Its blurred silhouette captured only once before vanishing. In 2023, a Cumberland Plateau camera recorded a barrel-chested wild man with heavy brow and coarse facial hair as it paused to stare directly into the lens. Contemporary hikers describe encounters with beings exhibiting intelligence beyond mere ferality, watchers who observe from concealment, entities communicating through meaningful vocalizations, creatures displaying wilderness knowledge that exceeds normal human capabilities. These beings seem adapted to mountain life in ways that suggest transformation rather than simple isolation. The Great Smoky Mountains, despite receiving over 13 million visitors annually, has reported only 5 missing persons cases since 1934. Rangers speak of unusual wildlife reports, but rarely elaborate, their silence suggesting knowledge too disturbing for public consumption. Mountain communities pass down generational knowledge about beings that have haunted these peaks since before recorded history. Local testimony speaks of entities that operate by rules older than civilization. Since the 30s or 40s, there have been feral wild men living in these mountains. They are fast. They will snatch livestock and snatch children. Wild men represent humanity's darkest possibility, the recognition that civilization provides only thin protection against forces that can reclaim and reshape human flesh. Whether descendants of those claimed by mountain isolation, modern hermits choosing transformation over society, or victims of darker conjuring like the witches who shaped Rawhead from bone and rage, the evidence suggests that deep in Appalachian wilderness, the boundary between human and beast remains dangerously permeable. The mountains keep their secrets, and somewhere in those ancient hollows, the question remains, when humanity ventures too deep into the wild, does the wild venture deeper into humanity? In August 2019, a carload of friends became lost after dark on the Blue Ridge Parkway in North Carolina. The car's engine idled unevenly as their headlights caught what appeared to be an ordinary deer on the roadside. The driver, a woman in her early 20s, slowed to avoid the animal, her knuckles white on the slick steering wheel. But something made her pause. A friend gasped in the backseat as the creature rose onto 2 legs with a fluid, deliberate motion. It turned to stare directly through the windshield, its forward-facing eyes reflecting the headlights like a predator's. For several heartbeats, it maintained eye contact with an intelligence that felt distinctly non-animal before dropping back to all fours and disappearing into the tree line. The friends drove in silence until they reached civilization, each knowing they had encountered something that looked like a deer, but fundamentally wasn't. Park officials logged the report under unusual wildlife encounters, adding it to a growing file of similar incidents throughout the Appalachian regions. While the term "not deer" emerged from digital platforms around 2019, the phenomenon itself stretches back centuries. The Choctaws speak of the Cashahotapolo, a half-man, half-deer forest dweller known for its terrifying vocalizations and ability to single out solitary travelers, defying normal deer behavior. by deliberately approaching humans rather than fleeing. Cherokee traditions also speak of forest entities that mimic familiar animals while harboring malevolent intelligence, suggesting these encounters tap into deep cultural memories of corrupted nature that predate European settlement. Celtic traditions tell of the puka, a shape-shifting trickster that becomes a large black stag to startle night travelers with its sudden appearance, glowing eyes, and uncanny intelligence. Finally, Japanese folklore describes the Mumashika, a one-eyed, deer-bodied, horse-headed spirit with fangs and a single horn that exhibits the same visually distorted anatomy and unsettling gaze characteristic of not deer sightings. Each sighting contains unique details, but consistent elements persist across cultures. An uncanny intelligence behind eyes that are often forward-facing, joints that bend in unnatural ways, and an overwhelming sense of wrongness that distinguishes them from ordinary deer. What social media accomplished was providing a name and a platform for people to recognize that their isolated, disturbing encounters were part of a much larger pattern of sightings